Yeah, hi there. In this quick lab, we are going to take a challenge lab. This is GSP313. So this is a challenge lab. So what it means is that you will not be given step-by-step instructions. Basically, they will be giving you a scenario which we have to complete based on the knowledge that we had on the previous quick labs. So let's go through this challenge lab. Okay. So what it says that let me start the lab first. So meanwhile, it is provisioning the lab resources. We'll go through the task one. So task one says that we have to create a jump host instance. So that will be based on F1 micro machine type and using the default image of Debian Unix. So it's a straightforward creation of a VM machine using this F1 micro machine type. So we'll implement it as soon as the lab becomes available. Let's wait for it. So I'm connected to the GCP console and I have launched the Cloud Shell in a new window. Let's go through the list of commands that we have. First is gcloud auth list. So just to save the time, I have typed the commands based on the requirement of the lab earlier, and I'll be just quickly implementing it. So let's authorize it and gcloud config list project. This is to make sure that we are connected to the right project. Project is not there. Let's set it up. Gcloud config set project, and project ID that we have to find out is this. Now project is set. We'll just verify, and now what we have is we can describe the project. So using this command gcloud compute project info and describe dash dash project and our project name. So we get the details. If we scroll up, we will see. So this is the project which is created in US East 1 as the region, and the zone is US East 1B. Okay, so let's see if we can get this values based on the default zone and the default region. So currently we are not getting this default value. So what we can do is we can set it up. Gcloud config set compute zone. Zone is US East 1B and region is US East 1. So we are setting it up to the default values. And let's verify if we can get this default value. If we are getting values from this command, it means that defaults are set properly. So compute zone is US East 1B as a zone, and compute regions default value set in this session is US East 1. So this is fine. Now we are going to just set up one environment variable zone, which we might use it later if we want to. Let's create a virtual machine VM, which is basically the jump host as is specified in the task one. So gcloud compute instances create. Name of the VM is nucleus dash jump host. Machine type is F1 dash micro, and zone is the zone in which we want to create the VM. So now if we go here and if we check our progress, this is done, and you should see score getting updated soon. Let's quickly check. Okay, so 20 points are updated. Now we'll move to the next step, which is create a Kubernetes service cluster. So it says that we have to create a Kubernetes cluster in US East 1B zone, and the cluster, and we will be deploying containers, Docker containers based on this image hello app. Now this version will be 2.0, and we have to expose the port 8080 for this application. So let's go through it. So we have to first create a Kubernetes cluster. So I'm just using the command gcloud container clusters create. Name of the cluster, the name we are giving as my cluster. So let's clear up this screen, and this is for the task 2. It will take some time to create the Kubernetes cluster. Let's wait for it. Okay, so as per the requirement, Kubernetes cluster has been created in US East 1B location. Now we will get the credentials. So gcloud container clusters, get credentials, the name of the clusters. This is to get the credentials. Next step is we have to deploy an application. This application is based on the image, which is hello app, and the version of the image is 2.0. So we'll use kubectl command to create a deployment. Kubectl create deployment. Name of the deployment is hello dash server, and image it is using is from gcr.io. That is Google's image repository, and it is it is created the deployment. Now we have to create a service. So we have to expose the deployment at the port 8080 as required by the lab. So this is exposed now. Now we need to just check at the service kubectl get service. So if you see here, this it's pending. It will be allocating external IP address to this load balancer. Let's check it out again in a couple of seconds if it is coming. Let's wait for it. Okay, we got the external IP address now. So this is external IP address of the load balancer. So let's copy this external IP address and we'll go to the new browser and we'll check it out at port 8080. So if I go here and if I type http colon the external IP address and 8080 as a port, so we get this hello world version 2.0. This is what we had deployed. So task 2 is also done now. Now we'll go towards the task 3. So task 2, that was about the Kubernetes cluster, that's been done. Now if I check, now next is the task 3, which is related to setting up HTTP load balancer. So for this, what we have to do, we have to create an HTTP load balancer with the managed instance as a group of 2 Nginx web servers. Okay, and they have also given the startup script that we have to use. Uh, okay, so high level they have given the steps. So we have to create the instance template, target pool, and other things. This is exactly the same that we followed in one of the labs in which we created network load balancer and HTTP load balancer. So we'll follow the same steps. Let's go ahead. Okay, first we are going to create the startup script. So as given in the lab, we just copied and pasted this thing. So it's creating a startup.sh script which has commands like apt-get update, install nginx, and starting the nginx again. And then there is a sed command for the replacement. Let's move ahead. So step 1 is to create an instance template. So we are using this command gcloud compute instance templates. We're creating the instance template, specifying the region US East 1 and the startup script as a startup.sh that we had created. So the instance template has been created. Now we'll proceed to create a manage instance group using this instance template. Next, we created the manage instance group based on the template that we created. So the command we used is gcloud compute instance dash groups managed. This is the name we are going to create, and this is the name of this manage instance group. Template, it is using the template that we had created earlier, and size is 2 because this is what is asked in the lab, and zone is $zone. This is the environment variable that we had set to US East 1B. Now we'll be creating the firewall rule to allow traffic from TCP/80 port. Okay, the firewall is created now. So the command is gcloud compute firewall rules. Create the name of this firewall rule. Network is default, action is allow, direction is ingress. These are the source range and target tag, and the rule is TCP/80. So this is done. We'll move to the next step, which is to create a static address. Static address is created. Now we'll get the value of the static address what it has created. Let's save it for now for future reference. Now we are going to create a health check for the load balancer. So gcloud compute health checks, create HTTP basic check. This is the health check for the load balancer for port 80. Now we are going to create a backend service, gcloud compute backend services, create web backend service for protocol HTTP, port name HTTP, health checks is what we have created earlier, just here, and it's global. So the backend service would be created with this command. Let's wait for it to get created. Now we have to add instance group as the backend to this backend service. So gcloud compute backend services, add backend, this backend web backend service. Instance group is the one that we created earlier, and we are going to use the zone as US East 1B, or we can directly say $zone, because we have this variable already set up, I think earlier, $zone, yeah. So let's do this, create the instance. Let's clear the screen. So it says to add the instance group as the backend to the backend service. Let it create. This is done. We'll move to the next step, so which is to create a URL map to route the incoming request to the default backend service. So this is the command gcloud compute URL dash maps, create name of this URL map, and the default service is the web backend service. So this is done. Now we'll create a HTTP proxy. So using this command gcloud compute target dash HTTP dash proxies, create name of the HTTP proxy, and then the URL map. So this will be proxy that we have created here. Now we have to create a global forwarding rule to route the incoming request to the proxy. Just copy and let's clear the screen and paste it here. So what it will do, it will create the forwarding rule. So any request that will come for uh, the static IP address will be forwarded to the proxy, and proxy will forward it to the URL map, and that is actually linked to the backend service, and which ultimately points to the managed instance. Now we will be using the HTTP IP address, replacing the IP address with the load balancer's IP address to check the output.